We're talking multiple buildings here, opportunity for stables for the horses, an opportunity for a new ballistics lab, opportunity for a new fire and training academy at the same time. This is going to be something great for the city. It was a heavy lift between ourselves, the Housing Authority, and Brandywine, but thank God we got here. I don't want to overshadow that, because it is an awesome thing, and I think it's incredibly appropriate that we continue to staff and develop and improve and invest in public safety here in the city of Newark, because it's necessary. I also want to address the fact that recently, as in many cities around the country, we've been experiencing an uptick in violence. And I wanted to say just a little bit about that as we talk about these buildings being built and why they're being built, not just for the brick and mortar and for the beautification of the city and for replacing a historic building like William H. Brown Academy. They're being built because we need safety in our community. We need a well-trained police force. We need a well-trained fire service in our city. And it also begins the week of Peace Week that we've just begun in the city of Newark, that we're going to continue. As some of you know, and I know some of you have questions, so I'm just going to answer those questions ahead of time. We had an 8-year-old, I believe, who was shot in the house. Right now, we don't see any evidence that is a part of all the violence that's happening in the street. Right now, this is a horrible and tragic incident that happened in a household. It's under investigation right now. The prosecutor's office is investigating that as we speak, and we will bring that to a close by the grace of God very shortly. My condolences to the family, no matter what goes on, and losing an 8-year-old is a tragic event. It is a horrible situation for the family, for everybody involved in it. It's a horrible situation for our city. And I just want to say, because the 8-year-old is innocent, we mourn with that family as they try to come to grips with the reality of the fact that they will no longer have the 8-year-old in their presence. Yesterday there was a 17-year-old shot on the way home, I believe, from Lights Out that we have at Westside High School. I do want to say that as we talk all around the country about police reform, about the things that we're trying to do to make sure policing is constitutional, not just in the country, in the state, and in Newark. And as the mayor, I've been at the forefront of most of those fights, if not all of them. And I still continue to believe that we have the opportunity to be the best in class there. But we also can be and should be and will be the best in class at making sure that we reduce violence and crime in our city. That we cannot tolerate arbitrary violence and wanton crime in our community. That we will address it. You will see police presence and police response to acts of violence and crime and disruption and chaos in our community. We will not allow this city, as we've come such a far way, to deteriorate into a city of lawlessness. We will not. We absolutely will not, and we will respond with force. And for those of you who believe that you can take advantage of our posture because we are trying to build better relationships with the community, and we should, because we are trying to police constitutionally, and we ought to, because we want to be fair and just and equal, and we will. If you think that you can hide under that to continue the violence and crime in our city, you are mistaken. We will respond. We are going to respond, and you will see that response as we move forward in our city.
As the mayor mentioned, the city of Newark has made historic gains in policing in this city. Not just around rebuilding relationships with folks, restoring a sense of legitimacy with the community, rebuilding trust, but also in addressing violence. But unfortunately, the city of Newark has not been immune to what has happened in our country over the last 19 months. The pandemic and the effects after that have created a different set of factors that existed. And they continue to lead to problems that drive the violence that we're seeing, not just in Newark, but in cities and in small towns and in places all over this country. There are many factors that are playing a role here, but one that we cannot dispute is the access to firearms in this city and in this country, and new ways that illegal guns are coming onto the street. Sure, COVID and having schools closed, having less activities, that decreased structure for young people, that took people away from work and things like that. It gave people idle time to stew over conflicts that existed for a while. But certainly when there are more guns, there will be more gun violence. And tragically, when there is more gun violence, there will be more deadly gun violence. And that's what we're seeing, and that's what we're suffering through. Our police officers and our partners in county and federal law enforcement are working extremely hard to address these issues. At this point, last week, over 500 illegal guns were removed from the streets of this city. That's incredible, but it speaks volumes to what we're going through. We're seeing a new issue here with something that are called ghost guns that we had not seen in years before. There's been at least 18 ghost guns recovered in this city so far this year. What they are is they're weapons that you can buy over the internet, and they're completely unregulated. So folks can get them, minors can get them, convicted felons can get them. There are no serial numbers on them. They're completely not traceable. And we've gotten 18 of them so far this year. That's just what we've recovered, when there were only 6 recovered in all of last year. So it's a trend that we're seeing across the country, and the city is dealing with that as well. Another major factor driving some of this violence is not just the guns that are available, but the lack of accountability when folks commit acts of violence. So our courts have been closed. You know, it doesn't matter if police officers are taking over 500 guns off the street if the folks that are going to use them against people in our city are not being held accountable, whether that's because the courts are closed or other issues similar to that. I'm extremely thankful for the leadership of our mayor. Our mayor is using every resource available to address this problem. Sure, it speaks volumes that we're standing here today to ensure that our police officers continue to have the most extensive training available in a state-of-the-art facility. But we're also using every resource available to address this problem. With Director Eure and her folks at the Office of Violence Prevention, to the 67 new police officers our mayor just swore in this past week. They'll be out here. There'll be more boots on the ground beginning this weekend and at night to address these problems. We can put police officers out in the street to try and do something immediately to address these issues. But unfortunately, the long-term solutions to get at the problems that historically have been happening in some of these neighborhoods, economic issues, and root causes of crime are going to take somewhat longer to address.
And so while we are talking about the spike in violence nationally, Newark has been able to manage and maintain its numbers, but we also know that one is too many. And while my office has social workers and victim advocates and therapists, it's still not enough. And we're working alongside law enforcement, instead of law enforcement, to be able to get to the root causes of why we have the spike in the crime and violence that we have. We know that gun violence is an issue. We know that we need to get to the root causes, and so we're working with the people directly in a way that law enforcement can't necessarily do. So we're the community-based public safety aspect of law enforcement. And so we're working collaboratively, we're working together in partnership with, and so as we're doing that, we know that it's also a hard thing because we know that the trust of law enforcement, the trust of police is still not there in the city of Newark. And so we're working to be able to do that. So my office has the Brick City Peace Collective, where we have 16 community-based organizations, which includes the Newark Community Street Team, the Newark Anti-Violence Coalition, Newark Community Solutions, Newark Police Department, Newark Public Schools, hospital-based violence intervention. clergy affairs. So we're all working in partnership, the hub, to be able to help women, men, children, all of us to be able to come together strategically, collaboratively, but most importantly, coordinated. So ultimately, we need to coordinate all of these efforts, pulling them together, and so my office is doing that. My office is also a clearinghouse for us to be able to fund a lot of the, the programming that we need to be able to do the work in our city, so that community-based organizations are not fighting over money. And so while the Office of Violence Prevention and Trauma Recovery is working diligently, we are at the scenes of these shootings. And so while we were at the hospital the other night for the 8-year-old that was shot, it was heartbreaking to see the families to just cry and be helpless at that moment. The 15-year-old, the 16-year-old, the 63-year-old, the 2-year-old. And while violence doesn't have a name on it, while bullets don't have a name on it, it is heartbreaking to see people and families broken over the violence that takes place. And we know that at the root of it is trauma. And trauma is residual, and it happens over and over and over again. And our families are doing retaliations, and we're working to mediate with the community, with the gangs, if you will, or the street organizations, where we're working with them and talking to them. And so my program this summer, we hire 120 individuals who are victims of crime and violence, and also the perpetrators of crime and violence. And we did an earn and learn program with them, where they're learning life skills, they're learning how to cope, they're starting their own businesses. And so while we need to be able to engage with them, work with them, and be able to get to the root causes, we have to shift the mindsets. That's what this is about. So we have all these guns on the streets, but what is the mindset of the people who are using them? And we're working with the people who are using them, the people who are at risk for using them. And our office is also working to be able to help the mayor's office, law enforcement, the city, and other cities to be able to be a model, to decrease crime and violence, not just to decrease it, but to shift the culture. And so the Office of Violence Prevention and Trauma Recovery has Peace Week this week, where we will be having our closing ceremony today at the Trek Center. We will be having our 24 Hours of Peace this Friday, from Friday night, 6 o'clock, into Saturday at 6 o'clock, where we'll be having resources, music, artists. And so we're bringing out all the stops that we could possibly bring to be able to deter and be able to intervene in crime and violence. So we're doing intervention, prevention, treatment. We're throwing everything we can at this issue. And so while we continue to work together, we need the community's help to be able to help us as well. So the cry today is, or the ask is for the community to be able to come out and to have an action as well. So we need the community's help in these issues and incidents. Thank you.
I'm gonna, I guess to sum it up, we have 4 beautiful facilities that we're building for our public safety department here in the city of Newark, and to also say that we're going to offer folks in the community hope, prayer, training, opportunity, second chances, third chances, to get your life right, to get your community right, to get your family right. But if you commit a crime, if you are involved in arbitrary violence and shooting of grandmothers, of 2-year-olds, of 8-year-olds, you will be arrested. You will be locked up, and prayerfully, you'll be thrown in jail. That we're gonna have a safe community. And that means that everybody is involved in it. And I need you to get just as angry when you put up videos of police that you think are mishandling residents and civilians. I think you need to get just as angry and put up the videos of these folks that are riding by in cars, shooting 2-year-olds, grandmothers, and other folks in our community. We need to be just as angry, if not more angry, in fact, and bring these people to justice. That's what the message is today. This is the message from me. If you want to quote something, quote that.